everyone, and welcome. I do want to start out by saying that intro, I forgot. I have not live streamed in quite a while, and so I've been working on this for a few minutes. We're trying to get it all set up and all. So I did not realize that was the intro that I had. As you can see on the screen tonight, what we are wanting to do is, we're doing a live stream of showing you the rankings here tonight of my rankings, what I think, is my top 25 teams in college football. So, and of course, I haven't live streamed in quite a while, so forgive me if it seems a little rusty. I've just not live streamed in a long time, and so, I wanted to do a little something. Also, as you can see, this is a makeshift studio setup. We are working on a new studio set, so that is to come. So for a little bit, we're going to be in this little makeshift area that I've got here. So, just keep that in mind when watching the streams. So, let's look at these rankings. Of course, number one, you got Ohio State. I mean, really, at this point in the season, I don't know how you can say otherwise. I know Indiana probably does have a more impressive win because they went on the road at Oregon and beat Oregon in comparison to Ohio State beating Texas at home week 1. But from what I've seen, I just think Ohio State is the best team right now. I got to see more from Indiana to prove to me that they are the number one team. Now, I'm giving them a lot of respect. They are number 2 in my ranking. I think Indiana definitely deserving of the number 2 ranking in my opinion. So I think there's a lot of people that could argue between, Ohio State or Indiana, which one's number 1. It's a good debate to have, but right now I just give Ohio State the edge. Number 3, I've got Alabama at number 3. Let me start by saying this. There are not many teams in college football that can go do what they have done the past month. Ever since they came back from bye week, they've beat 4 really good teams. Of course, you had that big night game against Georgia, which was a win. That was big time for Alabama. Then you have the Vanderbilt game at home, which was really big because this was a get-back game. They wanted revenge on Vanderbilt after what happened last year. Then, of course, you got the Missouri game, which Alabama, of all 4 of those games, the Missouri game was probably the toughest game Alabama played in that 4-game stretch. And Missouri gave them a run for their money. It came down to the very end to see what Alabama's defense could do and to see what Alabama's offense could do, really. It came down to the very end. And then, of course, last week against Tennessee, big win at home, getting the revenge on Tennessee. So, for Alabama, this has been, let me put it this way. If you take away the Florida State loss, they are probably, with the wins they have, they're probably the number 1 team in college football. Excuse me. So, that's something to keep in mind. That's why I got a lot of high praise for Alabama, putting them at 3 as a 1-loss team, which there are probably some undefeated schools that you could argue, hey, they're better than Alabama. Well, for me right now, Alabama is the best 1-loss team in college football. You can make the argument for the number 1 team in the sport. I got Georgia at 4. Really, what is the thing that's holding me back on Georgia? I got 2 concerns for the Dogs right now as we sit here on October 23rd, 2025. That is, one, they got the loss against Alabama. You can't go back and rewrite history. Bama beat them, I think Georgia definitely deserves to be one spot behind Alabama because of that. Now, what is the other factor here? And I think this is my main concern for Georgia right now. I'm not the biggest believer in their defense right now. That's my question. Now, I think their offense I love what their offense has done. I think they are one of the best offensive teams in college football. My problem with the Dogs is that you get into these games like, okay, against Tennessee, you're in a shootout against Tennessee. You have to come back. You're down 21-7, and you have to come back and win in overtime. Against Ole Miss last week, you're in a shootout again. So that is my problem with Georgia and I mean, it hurt them against Alabama, although their defense held Alabama to 24 points. Again, though, that is the issue I have with Georgia right now is I'm not so sure their defense is elite. Now, they may be good enough to win games, but what happens when you get down later in the season when you're going to have your defense win you some ball games if your offense isn't showing up? Is the defense going to show up for Georgia? I don't know. That's where I think Georgia is going to probably have a loss. Somewhere down the road, they're going to lose another game before the end of the regular season, from what I'm seeing. So, we'll just have to wait and see. At number 5, I got Texas A&M. And this is probably the one where people are like, okay, Cooper, how are they at 5, but you got 2 one-loss teams ahead of them? Well, it's simple. The way that they played against Arkansas really is concerning when you start looking at Texas A&M. Because it's a lot like what I was saying about Georgia. You had to play a shootout against a team they really shouldn't have. This is a team you really should have put away and not allowed 42 points to. So, Texas A&M, now you got the win against Notre Dame. That's really big. But there's just certain factors that I'm seeing that does concern me about the Aggies. And so we'll just wait and see what they do the rest of the season. But they're gonna lose somewhere. Texas A&M is going to end up losing somewhere down the road. I got Oregon at 6. Although Dante Moore did not look good against Indiana, which, I mean, the interceptions, it was bad. I still have confidence in them because the rest of the season, I don't know where they lose in the remainder of the season. I think Oregon is going to come out and show why they're probably one of the best teams in the Big Ten the rest of the season. So, I'm not concerned about them at all. I feel confident in saying they're going to be in the college football playoff. And so I feel like number 6 is a fair ranking for Oregon right now. Oklahoma at 7. Now, I know a lot of people probably are like, Cooper, how is Oklahoma ahead of Ole Miss? To me, you got to put into perspective of what, you got to put into perspective both Ole Miss and Oklahoma. And then you got Miami at 8. Oklahoma, the one loss they have is at the Red River rivalry against a Texas team which had come off a embarrassing loss against Florida. So, I think that Oklahoma, and I mean, you got to look at it too, Mateer, who people want to clown on him like, oh, he played terrible against Texas. Well, he was coming off an injury, so you got to give him some grace there. Big game, coming off injury. Let's just give him some grace here. You look at Miami at 8, and I feel like this could be generous for them, but I'm also keeping in mind what they've done, what they did at the beginning of the year. They beat Notre Dame at the beginning of the year. That's a good win. Miami, up until the Louisville game, they looked. I mean, you could argue they looked like the best team in college football. I know some people who told me they thought Miami was the best team. So, if you look at them, I mean, I can see where that came from. They looked good. However, in the case of Miami, after that game against Louisville, I think if you're going to put into perspective of how they started the year, and then, maybe this is just one bad game for Carson Beck, but it is concerning about the remainder of the season. Is this the same Carson Beck you're going to get the entire season? Like the remainder of the season? If so, then that's a concerning factor when it comes to the remainder of the season. Ole Miss at 9, and again, I think it just comes down to Oklahoma's got their starting quarterback. The guy who started the year for Ole Miss, he's not playing right now. So, and I mean, it comes down to also, in my mind, who do I think is going to win that game between Oklahoma and Ole Miss? I give the edge to Oklahoma because I think Oklahoma is just a better team right now. So, and I mean, it's not to say that Ole Miss is a terrible football team. I mean, look what they did with Georgia Saturday. They had every chance in the world to win that game. They just didn't put Georgia away. So, I do think Ole Miss is a good football team. I just don't think they're better than Oklahoma. Vanderbilt at 10. I mean, other than that Bama loss, we got to be honest here. Vanderbilt has looked like a really good football team. And there is just something about Clark Lee's team, Diego Pavia, and that offense. It just looks amazing. Every time you turn on a Vanderbilt game, they're just fun to watch. So, I think they are a team that could legitimately, I mean, you want to talk about a team that nobody really expected to make the playoff that could end up being there at the end of the year. I think Vanderbilt could definitely be that team. Because I know I didn't have Vanderbilt that high. So they could legitimately be a playoff team. They are that good this season. Does that mean that they would win a playoff game? I don't know. Probably not. But I think they're good enough to be there because you got to find, for the most part, I think the way it worked, if you look at last year and how it is right now, you're probably going to get the 9 best teams plus 3 teams that are added in because of, because you're a conference champion. That's all it is. So, that's Vanderbilt. Georgia Tech, and I mean, I know this is probably really low for Georgia Tech, considering what they've done this year, but I'm looking at their wins compared to the rest of the teams ahead of them, and I'm just saying to myself, I don't see it. And I mean, Ole Miss probably doesn't have a great win yet in this season, but also, though, you can look at the competition Ole Miss has played in comparison to Georgia Tech. You got to put that into factors is that, yes, you can be undefeated, but that does not make you one of the best teams in college football. That is not, the case to be made is what's your record? Who have you played? How have you played? And, it's basically all that. So, Georgia Tech, I think they're a really good football team, and they could legitimately win the championship this year. But I just haven't seen them play anybody worth really saying, oh, we beat this team. They're really good. Like, they haven't played that team yet. Really, I think if you get Miami and Georgia Tech in the ACC championship game, that would be big because that would be a massive matchup. Like it would be an incredibly big game for both schools. Let's see, Texas Tech at 12. I'm not going to overreact to their loss against Arizona State. Let's put it into perspective. Arizona State, they were in the playoff last year. And quite frankly, Baron Morton, he didn't play for Texas Tech. So I'm going to give them some grace here for Texas Tech. I still think they're a really good football team. I'm not losing hope on them so far. Yeah, I see Colton that Georgia Tech beat Clemson. But still, my thing is, I just don't see. I mean, the Clemson win may have looked okay at the time, but it does not look good now because Clemson's not a good football team. In the same argument, if you look at Alabama, if they don't have these 4 ranked wins in a row, that Florida State loss would probably keep them down like at 15 possibly, depending on what everything looks like. So that's just putting into perspective of what I'm looking at right now. Notre Dame at 13. I mean, I think at this point in the season, to be 5-2 and be number 13, I think that's high. I really do think that's being generous to Notre Dame. So I think that the Irish, they're a good football team. Do I think they're a team that could win a playoff game this year? I don't know that, though, because they didn't necessarily look great against Miami. They didn't necessarily look great against Texas A&M either. And so I just feel like they're not the same championship level team like they were a season ago. They're not that this year. So Notre Dame, I think it's generous at 13. That's just my opinion. BYU at 14. And I know people are going to be saying this is way too low for them. They just won the Holy War. But I mean, again, it's a lot like Georgia Tech. Who have you really beat? I mean, that's my thing. We'll see against Iowa State how they do, but in my opinion, they just haven't beat anybody other than Utah. And Utah's not even in my rankings right now. So we'll see about BYU. They'll probably move up later in the season. You got Missouri at 15, and I think that's being generous after the Auburn game, how they had to go into double overtime. But I mean, and again, I mean, watching the way they played against Alabama is what's keeping them at 15 right now, because they played Alabama really tough. Like, they really legitimately had a chance to beat Alabama, which would have been maybe the biggest win in program history if you look at the entire program history they've had. So, Missouri 15, I think it's a good spot. Tennessee at 16, I think they're still a really good football team. Go look at who they lost to, Alabama and Georgia. And the Georgia game to me looks worse because that Tennessee got up and then they had to play an overtime game with the Dogs at home. I mean, that doesn't look that great. However, when you look at their loss against Alabama, you're on the road. I mean, I can excuse a road loss quicker than I can excuse a home loss like they had against Georgia. That's just my opinion. But Tennessee, I still think they're a really good football team. So I'll put them at 16. LSU at 17, I think that's a good spot for them because they had a chance to beat Vanderbilt. And, the 2 losses, Ole Miss, Vanderbilt, I mean, I think they are still a solid football team, and they could still, I mean, they are still in that contention to be in the college football playoff. It's not over for LSU. You just got to win out at this point. You cannot afford to lose a game now. That is the truth of the matter. So LSU 17, I think that's a good spot for them. You got South Florida at 18. That's my highest ranked group of 5 team. And I have been high on them all season. After I watched the way that they trampled. And I mean, that's just being nice about it. They trampled Boise State. And then they came back. They went on the road to Florida, which let's look at it from the standpoint of what it is. You went to an SEC school and beat them on their turf. I don't care. They're the best group of 5 team right now. Although they had the bad loss to Miami, Miami's a good football team too. So, and then they played against a team that was in the running for best team in the group of 5. They just obliterated North Texas. It was that second half they put it away. It was like, I think it was like tied at halftime of that game. So, South Florida, they are my group of 5 team, right? I mean, as long as they keep winning, they're the group of 5 team that I think should be in the college football playoff. If you look at their entire resume to this point. Virginia at 19, I think they're a really good football team. And they had that win against Florida State, which doesn't look as good now as what it did at the time. But you got that win. So Virginia, I think it's a good spot for them being at 19. Cincinnati at 20. Big win against Iowa State at home a couple weeks ago. It's a good win, and they played Nebraska tough all game, although losing it. So I think 20 is a good spot for them. Louisville at 21. I think it's a good spot for Louisville. After beating Miami, I just can't. The jump from being unranked to like in the top 15 to me is a little ridiculous. So I like Louisville at 21. I think that they're a good football team, and they're going to be a good football team. I just don't see them being any higher at this point in time than 21. 22, I got Michigan. I think they're a good football team. And I know people are going to look at this and they see USC's got 2 losses. USC and Michigan both have the same record. USC beat them, though. Why do you have Michigan ahead? Well, it's because USC, their talent-wise, I don't see it compared to Michigan. So right now, I'm going to keep Michigan at 22, but we'll see throughout the rest of the year. Houston at 23, 6-1. I mean, it has been an incredible season so far for the Cougars, and it's exciting to see what they've been doing. 6-1, and they're in the rankings. Hey, I mean, Houston would not have thought about this last year. Tulane at 24, again, having a great season. We'll just have to wait and see what they do the remainder of the year. And if you get an American championship game between South Florida and Tulane, and James Madison loses again, then that could legitimately be your basically win and you're in the playoff type game, which could be really good for the American. Think about it. And, of course, James Madison is my last ranked team because I think they also have a shot at the playoff. So, right now, group of 5 wise, South Florida, Tulane, James Madison, that's my top 3 that I think could potentially play for the they could play for the college football playoff national championship game. Let me know in the comments right now, what's your thoughts on my rankings? Am I right or wrong? Let me know. What do you think about it at the moment? That's my big question here as we speak. But, of course, this is my first live stream I've done. in quite a while. So it may have been a little rough, but, you know, we're here and happy to be here. So, let's see. My next video will probably be Sunday or Monday, depending on how the editing goes. If you keep up with a lot of media, this week has been the beginning of the NBA season, which I know this is a totally different type of video that I'm going to be announcing, but I keep up with I like to keep up with how networks, I like to keep up with how networks do things. So our video coming up is that Sunday or Monday we're going to do a ranking of the NBA broadcast so far this season, and just let me know what you think about that video when it comes out. But Colton says here, solid ranking. I'd put Georgia Tech over Vandy personally. Okay, I mean I understand that, but I think from 10 on down, definitely it comes down to, if they were to play today, who do I think is winning the football game? That's just legitimately how I did it. I think Vanderbilt beats Georgia Tech most every night if they played on the field. So that's just how I did it. Excuse me. Well, folks, that is my rankings. So, of course, you get a full view of my setup. That's going to be temporary until we get our main studio up and going, which we don't have any timetable for that, but we're going to be working on that. So that is to come. So, with all that being said, we want to thank you for tuning in tonight, and of course, we'll be back Sunday or Monday with our NBA video. Folks, thanks for watching, and we'll see you again later.